All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're opening up a truly fascinating historical document from an organization known as Anand Pradeshan. We're going to analyze its extraordinary claims about remote healing, ancient sciences, and what they called the amazing power of Tantra. It's a genuinely remarkable window into how spiritual traditions attempted to position themselves alongside and honestly even above modern science. I mean, listen to this opening hook. It immediately transports us into the highly confident, mystical, and frankly quite bold tone of the source material we're exploring today. They aren't just pitching a subtle wellness routine here. They're promising a total eradication of suffering through a capitalized Tantra science. Let's look at exactly how they intended to pull that off. To keep things moving, here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The power of ancient Tantra. 2. Western science versus Tantra. 3. Anand Pradeshan's mission. 4. Infallible treatments. 5. Strict prohibitions. And 6. Surprising requirements. Starting off with Section 1, the amazing power of ancient Tantra. You know, if you're going to claim you have miraculous healing powers, you really need to establish some serious authority. And the authors do exactly that. They don't just cite one tradition, they invoke these massive cinematic, historical, and divine claims to back themselves up. They assert that ancient sages like Gorakhnath and Nagarjuna possessed infinite omniscience, literally capable of knowing everything happening in the world while just sitting in one spot. But they cross cultural boundaries too, explicitly mentioning Jesus healing the sick through mere touch and sight. They even reference the legendary moment Lord Shiva burned the formidable warrior Kamadeva ashes simply by opening his third eye. Essentially, they're saying this is the lineage of absolute power we're tapping into. Now, here's a crucial point. How does this text actually define what they're doing? Well, they define Tantra not as dark magic, which is definitely the popular misconception, but as a specific physical offshoot of a broader spiritual science called Yoga Mahavidya. They openly acknowledge it's more limited than the ultimate eightfold path of yoga, which is meant for spiritual liberation. Instead, Tantra is presented as a highly practical tool. It's used to increase your soul power, specifically so you can actively affect other people, whether to bring them benefit or harm. Moving on to Section 2, Western Science versus Tantra. This is where the document takes a super fascinating pivot. It goes right after the modern Western science of its day. They look at practices like mesmerism, hypnotism, and psychology, and they essentially say, that's child's play. The document argues that Western science relies on what it calls gross or physical energy. Because it's gross, a Western doctor literally has to sit face to face with you to have any effect. Tantra science, on the other hand, claims to utilize subtle vibrations. Because these vibrations are so fine and so powerful, distance doesn't matter at all. The text confidently claims they can treat someone sitting thousands of miles away just as effectively as someone sitting right next to them in the same room. And it goes way deeper than just crossing oceans. According to this source, these subtle vibrations don't just put on a temporary show. They supposedly penetrate what the text calls the secret mind, what we'd probably call the deep subconscious today. Once there, they allegedly rewrite the patient's internal state, creating profound, permanent physical and mental changes. Which brings us to Section 3, the mission of Anand Pradeshan. So, with all this literally world-bending power, you gotta wonder, what's the catch? Given the grand claims of curing complex diseases over thousands of miles, penetrating the subconscious mind, and channeling the power of ancient gods, what is the market rate for a miracle? Well, believe it or not, according to the text, the cost is absolutely zero. The document emphasizes heavily that the treatment is completely free. They explicitly state they make no financial agreements, they don't ask for fees up front, and they definitely don't hassle you for money afterward. They claim their practitioners rely solely on voluntary donations. If a patient is fully satisfied and gives willingly, they'll accept it to sustain their lives. Otherwise, the healing is framed entirely as a public service. Let's look at Section 4. Infallible treatment of diseases. Their scope of practice was, frankly, huge. They claimed Tantra was this ultimate panacea for severe mental anguish like depression, insomnia, anger, and memory loss. They tackled physical and life issues too, like severe unspecified diseases, childlessness, and even family disputes. Apparently, tantric vibrations can resolve your arguments with your spouse.
But what's really captivating are these supernatural claims. They casually list ghost obstacles and fear of the inauspicious right alongside insomnia. Now, my absolute favorite detail here is that they explicitly state they will not treat minor coughs or colds. So right, if you have a ghost problem, they've got you covered. But if you just have the sniffles, please don't write to them.
Next up is Section 5, What is Prohibited? To fight back against the dark, often misunderstood reputation that Tantra holds in popular culture, these practitioners draw a really hard line. They aggressively state that they will absolutely not engage in any sinful acts against anyone's enemies. That means no maran, which is killing or hexing, and zero vashikaran, which translates to mind control. Furthermore, if you are hoping to use their infinite omniscience to get rich quick, you are out of luck. They strictly refuse to help with gambling, stock market speculation, or finding buried treasure. They also distance themselves entirely from common astrology, refusing to read palms or cast horoscopes. By putting that disclaimer in writing, they're aggressively positioning themselves as pure, scientific, and spiritual healers. They were acutely aware of the scam artists operating at the time, and they argue that since they don't charge any fees or force any agreements, they literally have no reason to trick anyone. They frame their work as purely benevolent, aiming only to protect people from physical and mental suffering using what they call pure, scientific, spiritual actions.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 6, Surprising Conditions for Treatment. Okay, this is where we get a truly brilliant juxtaposition. You have this organization claiming access to the infinite, world-bending power of the cosmos, capable of curing diseases thousands of miles away, but they very pragmatically note that they simply cannot afford the postal fees. If you want their help, you absolutely must include a 1 on a postage stamp in your envelope. If you don't, your letter goes straight in the trash and you won't get a reply. It's this wonderful, slightly hilarious crash of the divine right into everyday bureaucracy.
So once you've got your postage sorted, the actual physical requirements get incredibly specific, visceral even. To initiate the energy attraction, they need 4 things. First, full details of your life and your disease. Second, a photograph no older than 5 years. Third, and this is where it gets highly ritualistic, they demand exactly 11 hairs pulled from the patient's crown, or choti. Finally, they require exactly 1 drop of blood taken specifically from the left thumb, dripped onto white blotting paper. Now, they do add a caveat that for young children or the very elderly, they might waive the blood requirement, though they say it'll make the cure take longer. This blend of ancient, earthy ritual with almost clinical precision is just fascinating.
The text also comes with a pretty serious warning label. It asserts that the moment this remote treatment kicks in and they use your hair and blood to lock onto your location, you are going to physically feel it. They claim the patient will be suddenly flooded with extra energy, resulting in shortness of breath and intense shivering.
Because of those intense physical reactions, there's a strict safety protocol. You absolutely must have a companion, basically a spotter, nearby when the treatment begins. Furthermore, they claim that shortly after treatment, the patient will begin to witness astonishing, miraculous visions and dreams. And here's the final rule. You must resolve beforehand to keep those visions strictly secret. No talking about it.
So, what are we supposed to make of this Anant Pratishthan document? It's wild, right? We have strict moral codes mixed with requests for blood on blotting paper, sweeping claims of divine omniscience right alongside demands for a 1 on a postage stamp. As we wrap up this explainer, we're left to ponder the incredible intersection of deeply held belief, ancient tradition, and the universal human desire for healing. Is this all just an elaborate, highly intricate placebo system of faith? Or is it a sincere attempt to codify a lost spiritual science? Whatever you believe, it definitely leaves us with one big question. Just how far are we willing to go, and what are we willing to seal in an envelope to finally find a cure for our suffering?